I had a coworker that came and got me out of my classroom, and she said, "Oh, they want you in the guidance department." And I went in, and there stands 2 police officers. And I knew immediately. I think my first words were, "He's dead, isn't he?" And I just remember my parents coming in, and they had to pick my kids up from school. And they knew something was wrong for my mom and dad to come and pick them up. I just remember my son he told me, "I prayed that nothing was wrong with you. I was so worried that something was wrong with you." Me. I think he already knew that something was wrong with his dad. But I think at that time he was fearful that his normalcy was going to be taken away as well.
Well, I think addiction is a pretty complicated issue. There's many ways to describe it, but essentially what it will be is somebody has a propensity to do something to extremes, whether that's drinking alcohol, whether that's gambling, whether that's sex addiction, and no kind of rational information is enough to curb the behavioral pattern. A person could go, 6 months, not have a drink, for example, but when they drink, they will drink to extremes. You might not gamble for a year. Then you go out and gamble and you're going to spend a whole large amount of money. You also have to look for other things too, because it's not quite as simple as that. In many, many cases, when you have addictions, you also have other things. So you have to rule out that any of those other things are playing the predominant role in what's leading to the alcohol addiction or any other addiction for that matter. But essentially it's somebody that will engage in an activity that has negative consequences, and they do it to extremes. And it has all the repercussions associated with it. The behavioral patterns, the family difficulties, the work losses, that usually all contribute to the problem.
Well, it wasn't. It was gradual. I always knew these things, and it continued to be gradual. But I saw the severity of it. He had a party for me for, I can't remember if it was my 35th or my 40th. It must have been my 40th birthday, because that is really when I took notice that we had a problem. And I say we because it's my family. But he had planned this trip, and we went to the lake. And I remember as soon as we got there that he had been out with a friend the night before, and I really do think that he was still intoxicated. And on that particular trip, 3 particular things happened. First of all, on the drive up, he said that he was going to stop. I remember it was on the way to Bedford, and he stopped at just a convenient mart, and he went in and got a drink. So that was the first sign. If it's 2 p.m. and he's drinking, then how is it going to be at 8 for the party? And so I think we argued about that, and I think I said that, that it was inappropriate and that we were hosting this party. And so then we went to the lake house, and I remember him, like, right off the bat breaking something, but it wasn't intentional. It was just that he was not, he was intoxicated. And then he left and went to the grocery store and had an accident in the parking lot. And he could have gotten a DUI right then and there. I do not know how he talked himself out of it. I can't exactly remember the situation, but when he came home and told me, I was like, well, obviously he left to go and get more alcohol. And, that was just, that right there, I knew that something was wrong. And even before the party really even got started, I could just see the decline of him. And he ended up, we had all these couples that were spending the night, and he ended up like going and passing out, and then wanted to bring me, come on, it's time for bed, but we have all these people here. And so I think that was the very first, not the very first time, but that was probably the flag that I realized, this is not what I want. I want to see something different. I don't think that he thought that his problems were as big as they were and as big as they grew into, because at the end, it was very, very bad. And I do think that he wanted to get help, but I just think that drinking had been such a part of his life from such a young age that it was just like part of life, part of life. Just maybe he felt like he needed to have that's what was expected. That was the next step, to continue on. But I do think he was self-aware. But I don't think that he was physically strong enough to make those changes. I don't think that it snuck up on him. I think he was always a drinker. I do think that he was looking for a quick fix, and I think that he was looking for a way to help salvage a relationship. I remember great times, and I try to make it a point for my sons to reflect upon the good times that they remember. But there were lots of bad times, and so when you ask me, tell me about the good times, I really have to stop and think. But BJ, as I've said before, was a loving, charismatic man, great sense of humor, very charming, excellent salesman, and very dedicated to his work and to his sons. And so, those were good times. But the bad times are still so fresh, even though it's been almost 5 years since he's passed. That I often wonder, I was just thinking the other day about a situation where I can't remember what happened, but I don't know if it was that he promised he wouldn't drink, or if it was just something that happened. And I remember an argument breaking up, and it involved our kids. And because I was going to leave, and I was going to take the kids from the situation. And I remember the desperation from him, because he did not want us to leave. And I think back, did I abandon him? Should I have stayed? Should I have left? And I remember he was holding on to my youngest child, and my youngest child was very scared because it was loud and just not a good environment. And I remember my oldest child just sort of like trying to get my youngest child away from him, and it just being a bad situation all the way around. And I was just thinking about that yesterday and praying that my youngest does not have that memory. It's just a hard memory and a horrible thing for him to have to I just hope he doesn't remember that.
My oldest child, he was in the 6th grade, so he saw these things. He saw these things. My youngest child was in the 3rd grade at the time, and he didn't understand. He just had this unconditional love for his dad. I wanted to talk about a second time. Again, my son was playing baseball, and we were traveling back and forth, trying to just, keep their life as regular as it could be. and we were on the baseball field, and BJ wanted to be such a part of their lives, and we were at this game, and he showed up, and he had gone and gotten a baseball mitt, and he wanted to be such a part of it. And I remember him just sort of standing on the outskirts and wanting to be included, but unfortunately he was very intoxicated, and time and place, and I remember a family sitting close to me, and they didn't know who I was, but they were focused on BJ and his state of mind, and I remember the girl looking at her dad and saying, "Look at that drunk guy." And that was just horrible, because then it was just so real that there was no hiding this anymore. But I had a lot of support. I remember that day a friend coming over and just sort of putting his arm around me and subtly letting me know that he was there to support me and that I was doing what was right. To me, what I deal with now, even though BJ's been gone almost 5 years, to me it's the guilt of me saying, okay, this is enough. I'm taking my kids out of this situation, and I want them to have some normalcy. And so that is what BJ focused on. He focused on, if you would just stay with me, then I can overcome this. If you wouldn't leave me, if you would come back home, then we can make this work. And I remember trying that numerous times, and it just didn't work. And so that is something that I live with every day, is what if I had given him a second chance? What if I had not broken our family up? Where would we be today? What would be the situation? How would our lives be? Would he still be showing up at functions intoxicated, causing stress to my kids, and wanting them to again try to shelter that life and not be a part of it? Or would he have made a breakthrough? And we just don't know. But that's something that I live with every day. Just the guilt of what if, and could I have prevented this? And I thought that BJ had hit rock bottom many times.
Right.
Losing a job from a company that you're part owner of. I mean, I would think that would be a sure sign, but I think that he had, with his addiction, I think that he had already started to sever ties from his company anyway, and I think that was just, another transition over to closing shop and, just living in this world.
Right, you're talking about the horrible parts of addiction on both sides of it, for the addict and for the family and friends. It's a mess. It's terrible. So
it is, and it does affect so many people. I mean, I remember at his funeral, just so many people, and all these people wanting, having these awesome memories of BJ, just this bundle of energy, and the life of the party, and right on cue with his quirky remarks, and really a good sense of style, and I think that the people had gotten to this point where they had to also sever their ties in hopes that he would get back on the path.
right.
If I had to define him, I would think about his accomplishments in life, how successful he was in his business, and how he was loved by everyone and brought joy and happiness and compliments to everyone. So, even though it's very easy to define him as an alcoholic, you know, a very tragic alcoholic with a very tragic story. I don't define him that way.
You know, his death and what we went through for many years until his death. I mean, this wasn't just a really sudden thing. I mean, he died tragically alone in a hotel room.
That's a saying that some of us used that talked about it before that knew him. There isn't anything sadder than that. There isn't anything more tragic.
There is not. And I drive by that hotel, and there will never be a time that I don't look at it and know that that's where my husband and my boy's dad died. Tragically, just so, like, unnecessary.
I talked to him the day before he died.
I remember you saying that.
And he did not think he was going to die.
He did
This
not.
is not suicidal. He did not think that.
Yeah. You know, he called his mom that Sunday and told her that he was not well.
What finally resonates with somebody when they start turning their life around?
Well, I think that's an interesting variable, because I think this is why I think you have to look at the whole person. So you start off with this disease, then you start addressing all the issues with the people, because people are wired different. And I think that's really important in terms of treating addiction, although they may have this common theme, and that they'll abuse a substance, you know, at any cost, whatever it takes. There's still a person underneath there that has to integrate that into their ability to deal with the addiction. So I think it takes different formats. You know, a lot of times you'll hear family members say, well, you know, they're laying in a ditch, they're unconscious, and then they go back and they drink again. What is the bottom? Well, for different people, it's different things. But I do think you have to you've got to reach a point where you want the help. And then I think that's where the 3 R's come in. When you want the help, you get involved in a good AA, NA program. A lot of times you have to go to treatment. And then you start addressing these issues and try to live every day by those 3 words. What's realistic, what's responsible, and what's right. I think if you're doing that every day, you give yourself a chance to make it.
The fence was where I got to, and it was something to hold on to, because I'd walk and fall down. And I got from that side door out to the fence, and at one point I'd fallen and did a header onto the asphalt, and I didn't realize it, but I was bleeding. I'd split my head open, and I had a concussion when I got to the emergency room. So I'm imagining, I'm supposing it came from that. But the only stability I could get to try to stand up or to be heard, I was trying to get the night watchman when he came. He makes rounds regularly. I mean, I don't know what was the schedule, but I wanted to be out there and be able to see him or yell at him or get his attention so that I could get some help. Yeah. I mean, when I got there, when I was coherent enough to realize what was going on, I knew that I came as close to dying as I could possibly ever come and do what I was doing. And then if I did it again, I probably would die. Well, I would die. I knew that because I'd been hearing that for a while, and I didn't believe it. But it had gotten to the point where the last time I drank, I had consumed so much that my whole body was shutting down. My wife had left months before that, and I didn't have any contact with her. Work was going on. I mean, the accountants were working, the guys that I was foreman were working. Work was going on, and I just stayed here and drank. You know, occasionally I would talk to people. I'd have a meeting with a couple of the guys that are working with me and go over a few things. The accountant would talk to me. we needed a lawyer to talk to me. Once in a while he would do that. Whatever was needed. Things went on, and I just continued to drink. I always drank too much. And usually the increments that I drank weren't so much that they were going to kill you. And it progressed to a point where now I was finally there. I was at the place where this is it. And of course I was always playing music, so I would have music on. I had to have music on. And I remember there was a Warren Zevon song that just replayed itself in a loop. And it was Numb as a Statue. And I was numb as a statue. I didn't get high. I didn't get a buzz. There was no fun. All the fun, I had drank all the funny out of alcohol. There was nothing enjoyable about it. Everything was gone. And the most I got was this dull, numb Novocaine feeling. Like I was numb as a statue. I didn't feel like they understood family. And I didn't feel like they understood. I drank what I drank, but I also work. I also do what I need to do. I provide. I do this. I do that. I meet my obligations and then some to everybody that works with me, for me, my family, everyone. And I felt like they were being overly critical, especially family, of me, without understanding what the situation was. So you drank too if you had my problems and that kind of thing. But it's in looking back at it again, it took me several years to get to this point. It took me several years to get to this point, but I don't see it that way now. I was being more intolerant of them, and they were trying to tell me what was going on. I just didn't want to listen.
I'm trying to struggle with a way to ask about it's like, is it a matter of it finally breaks you, but which you could definitely say it's like from your experience, like, okay, that experience by the fence, that broke you. That made you turn it around. But is that really the defining moment, or is the defining moment when you took charge?
The defining moment is when I took charge. Because my self-will wasn't going to allow me to stop drinking. My self-will was failing me. The real strength is accepting the problem, and then being able to deal with it. When I'm fighting it, I'm fighting a losing battle. And I can't see that. It took me a long time to get to the point where I could see that. And that I don't feel as being broken, but just getting to a point where you can realize what you are and what the truth is. What the truth is was hard to take for me. I didn't want to be an alcoholic. I didn't want anything to do with it. My willpower would carry me. My work ethic, and my ability to do what I believe I can do were always strengths of mine. I can make this work. I knew I could make it work. I could get around. I can get through this and still be able to drink. And I absolutely could not. Or die. You can have your choice. And that's where I had to take it. I could have been, like you saw, broken along before that, which would have been a lot smarter. But I didn't. I wouldn't allow it because of self-will. That's what took me as far as I went, is that I wasn't going to be broken. I could prove that I could do this, and I could not. And there's this one moment of clarity, this realization. There's a pivotal point, I think, in everybody's turnaround, everybody's sobriety who makes it, that they realize that. Mine happened to be a lot further down the line than most people's. That doesn't mean that it makes it any. It doesn't justify mine any more so than theirs. Mine's no different, really, in my way, other than I had to take it that far. As I progressed and drank more, in order to hold everything together, I'd hide it so that my wife or whoever, principally my wife, because at home she would see what I was drinking. Say before we went somewhere, went out to dinner, went to see friends, went to a cookout, did anything with other people, I'd always be drinking, and she might have a drink or two, very little of anything, but I would be drinking, and I'd have a decoy drink that was out, like I'm just having a little bit of this and this little bourbon or whatever, and I'd drink minis that I'd hidden all over the place. In the wintertime, I'd have them in socks. I could walk around like, have 2 pints walking around with them, shots, and go through those in a period of time. Sometimes people would wonder, how did he get so drunk so fast? And that was the reason. But there was my obvious drink, too obvious, maybe, and there was the drinks that I was having in addition to, and nobody knew what that was except me. So there's a certain amount of shame, and you know you're hiding, you know you're lying, you know you're not telling the truth, and it's not a fun thing to do. I didn't like that. I didn't like myself for doing it, you know. But it becomes a time where I've said this before, and I think it's a Chuck Palahniuk line in Fight Club. I was a tourist in my own existence. You know, I was watching it all go by. I was going to do great things. I could do this, I could do that, but I wasn't doing squat. I was drunk. And I knew I was capable of more than that. And if you were an alcoholic, you couldn't do what I did, because I'd run marathons. I would train and I did a lot. I did marathons and triathlons. I worked out regularly. I continued to do that even when I was drinking. You know, I remember a time I drank, I had a few shots one morning, and I drank a lot of water, so I figured that'd be okay. That fixes that. And I was going for a long run. I went out to run, and it was an early morning in the summertime. But as the sun got up, it got hot and humid. And somewhere along the line, I was out in the field, and I just passed out. And I woke back up, and I was dehydrated. I need to drink more water. It had nothing to do with alcohol. I never considered alcohol as a problem. You know, I was in complete denial about it and about the way I used it. And it's a miracle that I lived through a lot of the stuff that I did just on an ordinary basis, or a regular day-to-day basis, because and I also ignored the fact that I was having seizures before I ever started having what I thought were seizures. I thought they were muscle spasms. You know, when you just twitch, all of a sudden you go into something and your body seizes up. I would do that at night a lot. I didn't know what they were. I'd never tell the doctor that. I never told the doctor the truth about anything. But I was fanatical about what I ate and what I did and my health. So that when I had my physical every year, I'd almost train for the physical. You know, watch what I ate, get my weight right, so on and so forth. As long as I had a green light, my liver counts were all good. Good to go for another year. And I've still got all those lab reports. I got boxes of them that I kept to see if there was great, and there wasn't. You know, my lab work stayed pretty good, or always good, really consistently through the end to the end. And then you could see that the last month or so there was a huge spike in my liver counts and things of that nature. But by that time, everything had begun to fall apart anyway. But I'm not the kind of person that's going to have a few drinks and then I never did. I mean, it progressed over a period of time to something more than that. But I'd have to have a few more after everybody had gone. I'd never had as much as I always had more than anybody else had, and I couldn't stop. It eased up. It eased insidiously. It got worse and worse and worse, and I didn't really become aware of it until it was going on for years and years. And other people I was perceiving them as being rude, hateful, not being understanding at all to the situations that I dealt with. My wife left as she came home one Sunday. She'd gone to see her sister in Northern Virginia. And I was downstairs at the townhouse we had watching a ball game, drinking a beer. And she came in and she just started crying and just sobbing. And she was packing stuff and moving things. And I said, what's going on? She said, I'm moving. I'm going to stay with my mother, whoever, until I had to go back. She said, I'll even go back to my sister's house if I have to, but I'm not going to stay here. I can't. I love you and I'll always love you, but I can't watch you kill yourself.
If addiction is so common, is it normal?
Well, my immediate response is, who cares? You know, if you have bipolar depression because it's so common, do we just normalize that? I mean, I don't think it really matters. I think what matters is what you do with it. I think we live in a society that may foster more of this than maybe in the past. But that's why I think the treatment has to include all the variables that are there. But I think if you look at the first step to AA, it's, you admit who you are and say, I have a problem. So if that's the case, I don't think it really matters what the rest of people think or they normalize that. I think it matters what you're doing with your treatment. And that to me is more important than how we go about it, talking about it. I mean, you can plug in the internet right here and they talk about it every day. So I mean, I don't think there's like a big stigma about it like maybe there used to be. But the issue still remains, what are you going to do with it? That's more important to me than how we get there.
As a result of this disease, my life is completely different, changed forever, whether I wanted to change it or not. And it will be that way, as long as I can stay sober. And it is a daily thing that I do daily. I work it daily. And if I don't, it's a very good possibility that I would go back and try in spite of what I've gone through. That's the craziness, that's the insanity of this whole thing, is that I would try. I think I could drink safely again. That's the insanity of it. Because those thoughts occur. And all I have to do is think a little bit about what I have done, what I've been through, what other people have been through with me. And that usually goes away pretty quickly.
You've been through the treatment, you've been through various residential things. How's your story compare to others?
Mine's no different, really. I mean, I did do one thing differently when I was getting ready to leave treatment after about 28 days, and they said, you need to go to they didn't call it a halfway house, a recovery house, to stay when you get out, because you're a chronic relapser, and what you need to do is be in an environment where there are other people around you. And I went, I said I would do anything that was told to stay sober. And I said I wouldn't do that, and they reminded me again that I had made this comment that I would do anything. So I agreed to go over there, and I met with the manager of the house, who's a really nice guy. I liked the guy. His name was Tony Maitland. And it was Roads to Recovery, and I went there, and I stayed. And I stayed, it's pretty more normal now, but I stayed like a year and a half, because it was working, and I knew it was working. I knew it was working after 30 days. And it is the camaraderie, the group there. No matter who you are, I don't care what your economic status is, your religion is, your race is. Everybody's got something in common there, and it's an addiction. Whether it's drugs or alcohol, it doesn't matter. You're an addict, and we all have the same family problems, work problems. Usually, I owned a business that sustained this, and that's only because of other people that I had. And I also had a driver's license, which was like gold, because very few people did, and I could take people around. I'd take them. You had to go to meetings, AA meetings, and I decided to go in the morning early because it was more convenient for a work schedule. And there was always guys who would ride with me, and I had a Jeep then, and it was like one of these cars you see in Ringling Brothers when we pulled up. Guys are stuffed in there and getting out of the back, and from out of the sides, you never knew how many people were going to be in there. But it became something that was enjoyable, and there wasn't a hell of a lot of enjoyment going on at that time. The happy is in the realization that you're sober today, that you're able to go through these things sober, that you don't have to go drink because of any single event. I could drink over anything. I could justify drinking for any reason, and I don't do that now, and I don't need to. There's a freedom to that. There's a liberation to that. You live free of that, and when you live free of that, you really do, maybe for the first time since you were a kid, live a life that you want to live.
Tell me about knowing BJ.
He and I started about the same time. I met him on a Saturday, the Saturday 7 o'clock meeting over here on Boston Avenue. And we had very similar situations. He was married. He had a couple small kids, which I didn't. But other than that, he had risen through the ranks pretty quickly with the company he was with. And I'd started a business that after about 10 years had just taken off. We were both doing pretty well, and had this families that didn't understand what we were talking about, what we were doing, and were always nagging us about the alcohol. And they just wanted us to get off our backs because there was a lot of pressure to do what we did. There was always pressure to do what we did, to meet deadlines and to produce. And there was a lot of commonality there. And he was just trying desperately to get his family back together, like Marie's saying. But his side was, from my side, the same, that nobody was really understanding what he was trying to do. I'm sure if he had survived, I'm sure if he was here today, he would tell a different story, like I do. But at the time when you're drinking and you're trying to justify what you're doing, and you're getting pretty desperate to get things pulled together, you're not thinking properly. You're just not. First of all, you're not coherent at all. You're drunk. You're in no position to be making decisions like you're trying to make. They're not good decisions at all. They're not thought through, and you're not capable of thinking them through.
The last photograph was taken at a cross-country meet. My son, my oldest child, was running his first year. He was in 6th grade. And the photograph must have been taken in September, and then he died in November. But I remember him. He came with a friend who was a member with him in a group. And I know that friend wanted to give him back some normalcy because he was not seeing his kids a lot. If he did, it had to be, certainly he couldn't drive to see them because at that time he was just, there was no sobriety at any point during those times. But a friend brought him to the cross-country meet, and I can still just remember his shirt, and I just remember his hair and how bloated he looked, and just in his face, and how desperate he was to have normalcy and to be a part of our family. But at the time, my son wanted nothing to do with that. I think he was just embarrassed. And I think he wanted to get out there as fast as he could. But I was taking a picture of my son, and that's when BJ said, take a picture of us together. And I did. And I came across it not too long ago and wanted to delete it because it is not a good picture. And it's exactly how I remember him in those last stages, those last months of his life.
You still have it?
I do still have it.
Ernest Hemingway wrote in A Farewell to Arms that the world breaks everyone, or it kills them. But those that survive can become stronger at the broken places, and I believe that.